Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and a very good evening to you, depending on the time zone that you have joined us today from. Ayashita Mathur, I'm your host for today, and I'm delighted to bring to you this webinar on Smart on Fire in Action, building plug and play healthcare apps. Before we begin, let me give you a quick background on who we are and what we do here at Mindbowser. Here at Mindbowser, we are a health technology based consulting organization building custom software solutions for clinicians. We've been in this industry for over 13 years now, and having that said, we've built various healthcare accelerators that are solving real life challenges for nurse practitioners. And today in this webinar, we will be giving you a walkthrough on EHR integration in terms of Smart on Fire, and we'll also be showing you a live demonstration on our HealthConnect application that shows how data is exchanged seamlessly. Now, on the screen, you can also see our partnership ecosystem, where we have strategically mentioned a few of our customers that we have worked with, and today we will be talking in depth in terms of Epic. Moving forward, I'd like to get you introduced to our expert speaker for today. Joining us today is Sanjit. Sanjit, if you could introduce yourself to the audience, please.
Hi everyone. So welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining. I'm Sanjeet, a senior software engineer specializing in building reliable mobile applications in healthcare. Over the past few years, I've been deeply focused on how modern standards like Smart on Fire are changing the way we build applications. Today, I'll be walking you through Smart on Fire in action, what it is, why it matters, and how it enables plug and play healthcare applications. By the end of this session, you'll have a clear understanding of how apps can securely launch within EHRs, how patients can connect their own data, and what best practices you can follow to make your solutions interoperable and future ready. Before we get started, just a quick note. We'll take questions towards the end of the webinar. So note down your questions and we'll provide you with answers during the Q&A section. All right, let's dive in. Let me quickly walk you through what we'll be covering today. We'll start with an introduction, then look at the challenges in healthcare that makes interoperability an urgent issue. Next, we'll understand what Smart on Fire is. From there, we'll explore how Smart on Fire works in practice, have a demo on HealthConnect application, our in-house solution accelerator for healthcare applications, and then wrap with summary and Q&A. So by the end of the session, you'll have both the big picture and clear understanding of how Smart on Fire can be applied in real-world applications. Before we dive deeper, let's take a quick poll. So you'll be seeing a poll come up on your screens.
Launching the poll now. So there we go. The poll is up on your screen. So go ahead and answer the poll. We'll just take a couple of seconds here and you can answer based on the relevance. All right, I think we have everyone's answers in. So I'll end the poll and share the results. And Sanjit, you can go ahead and talk a little bit about the answers and what our audience thinks here.
All right.
Over to
I
you,
see
Sanjit.
that. Thank you, Shita. So results, I can see that we have a fairly even split across different issues. So, and it is really a common question that we come across when we are working with applications that are specifically focused on healthcare. And it actually makes sense because interoperability is multidimensional. The important takeaway is that Smart on Fire provides solution for all of these issues. Also, let's jump back to the session and see how Smart on Fire actually addresses these issues. So, before we get into the tech of it, let's talk about the real world issues that we are trying to solve here. So, if you have ever been to more than one doctor, you know how frustrating it can get to repeat your medication history again and again to each and every doctor. That's mainly because healthcare systems don't talk to each other. Your data lives in silos at your hospitals, your pharmacy, your labs, but it doesn't flow freely between them. And that is the challenge number one interoperability. Despite advances in digital health, it is still incredibly very hard to share patient data between systems in secure and standardized way. The second challenge is data fragmentation. Even with a single system, information about a patient is still often scattered across different modules. Medications in one place, lab results in another, and notes yet in another. This makes it very hard for clinicians to completely get a picture quickly. And then there's integration complexity. Traditional healthcare software was never built with plug and play in mind. If you want to connect to a new app with your existing EHR, it often takes custom development timelines, extended timelines, high cost, and that actually slows the innovation and also discourages small players from entering the space. And that is the backdrop. That's why standards like Smart on Fire matter. They are not just about tech, they are also fixing the foundation of how we deliver and experience healthcare. Let's now dive into what we mean by Smart on Fire, a powerful combination that is actually transforming how healthcare applications are built and integrated. At its core, Smart on Fire brings together two major healthcare standards: SMART, which stands for Substitutable Medical Applications and Reusable Technologies, FHIR, which stands for Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resources. Together, they provide standardized way to build healthcare apps that can be plug and play, and much like how we install applications in our smartphones. Smart handles the authentication, authorization, and app launching. It also gives a consistent way to the data to get the access to the data from the EHRs. Now, on FHIR, on the other hand, defines how healthcare data is structured and shared, making the data readable, accessible, and interoperable. When we combine these two, the SMART and FHIR, we enable a whole new class of healthcare applications that are portable, secure, and easy to deploy across different systems. That's why we are calling them plug and play. So instead of every hospital or clinic building their tools from scratch, they can actually adopt to applications that are built once and use anywhere, saving the cost, time, and improving the patient care all at once. Now let's break down the smart part of Fire, Smart on Fire. It was designed with one big goal in mind, to make healthcare apps work like smartphone applications. Think about how easy it would be to download an app from App Store and it just works, much like applications we download from the stores. And it works on your iPhones, your Samsungs, your Pixels. And that is actually the vision behind it, to actually build apps that are reusable, substitutable, and compatible to any healthcare systems that support the smart standard. So, how does it work? Smart defines a platform architecture, a kind of universal docking station that allows apps to securely connect to EHR portals, the patient portals, and health data aggregators. It standardizes how apps launch and authenticate the user while also retrieving the data. And since it follows the modern web's technologies like OAuth2, it is secure overall. And here's the magic. Once Smart App is built, it doesn't have to be customized for each hospital or even the provider. It can plug into any systems that support Smart, making it highly scalable and cost effective. This substitutability means hospital can pick and choose from a library of tools, whichever whichever fits their need, just like choosing from the shelf of components from the tools library that we have. So saving the time on reinventing the wheel. It also gives developers and clinicians a shared language and foundation, which helps them to innovate quickly and responsibly in healthcare. So, in a nutshell, Smart brings app models to healthcare, enabling a more connected and modular, flexible ecosystem. All right. Now that we have covered Smart, let's talk about the other half of the equation, which is FHIR. FHIR is a standard developed by HL7, a global authority on healthcare data standards. And it's all about solving one massive problem in healthcare, the data fragmentation. In simple terms, FHIR gives us a common language to structure our health data so that it can be accessed and exchanged across the systems. Let me give you an example here. Let's say one hospital records your allergies in the system one way, another clinic records it differently, maybe using even different codes or the formats or even different fields entirely. FHIR steps in and says, hey, here's the standard for structure for allergies, here's the standard structure for medications, and how you can access it via API. And now the systems can actually talk with each other. FHIR is designed around resources. Think of them as modular building blocks for healthcare data. There's a resource for a patient, a medication, one for observation, like lab results, one for encounters, and many more. These resources can be combined, queried, and updated using the RESTful APIs, like every modern applications do. Another thing that makes Fire so powerful is that it was built using developers in mind. It uses web standards like JSON, XML, HTTP, making it much easier and faster to implement compared to older and more complex standards. So to sum everything, FHIR is data backbone of modern healthcare. It ensures that data is structured, standardized, and interoperable so that everything can flow where it is needed, whether it's hospital or a lab or even your smartphone application. And when you combine that with uh, the Smart app integration model, you'll get healthcare application ecosystem that is truly plug and play. At the same time, it is scalable, secure, and patient centered. Now, let's connect the dots for everything we have learned so far. Now that we understand what SMART is, a secure app launching framework, and what FHIR is, a modern standard for structured health data, it's time to see how they work together. Smart provides rules of engagement, like we already know, the authentication part, the authorization part, the launching within the EHR systems. FHIR, on the other hand, provides the content, the actual health data, in a consistent and structured format. Together, they create a powerful foundation for healthcare applications. Picture this. You have smart enabled app that logs into hospital's EHR system. Smart uses OAuth 2 to authenticate the user. Once that's done, app uses FHIR APIs to retrieve the patient's data, say medication, allergies, recent lab results, and all that happens in real time. This combo dramatically reduces development overhead. It removes the need to build custom integrations for every EHR and also ensures that your app can speak the same language no matter where it is deployed. And that is the power of Smart on Fire, a clear separation of concerns, modern web standards, and true interoperability in action. Now, understanding the launch framework, this is where the framework comes into play, and it really defines the user experience for both clinicians and patients. The Smart App Launch Framework defines the standard way to connect EHRs and patient portals. It ensures whether the app is started by clinician inside the EHR or patient can directly start the application from the device itself. And all that happens in secure, consistent, and interoperable manner. At its core, a framework relies on OAuth 2 for authorization and passes context for the patient or the encounter, and then provides access token so that the app can pull data from the FHIR API. This framework is what makes smart apps feel seamless instead of clunky integrations that we can come across. In EHR launch, the app is started from inside the electronic health record system. Imagine a doctor is reviewing your patient's chart in Epic or Cerner. They click on a button, launch a smart app. Maybe it's a medication dashboard or a clinical decision support tool. Now, when the app opens, the EHR pass along important informations in the background, like patient ID, encounter ID, or who the user is. This is called the launch context. The app then uses the launch token, completes the OAuth2 authorization handshake, and gets an access token. With that token, the app can pull the right patient data from the FHIR server instantly. The key here is context awareness. The app knows who the patient is and doesn't force the doctor to search again. It feels seamless, almost like this third party application is part of EHR. Now compare that to standalone launch. Here, the app doesn't start in EHR, it starts directly from the app itself. For example, a patient opens a mobile app from App Store. When they connect with the health record, the app redirects them to EHR's authorization system, maybe through My Chart login application. The patient signs in, reviews the consent screen, and approves the requested data scopes. Once approved, the app receives the access token and can pull the data directly through the FHIR server. So the difference is in EHR launch, the provider kicks off the flow inside the clinical system. In standalone launch, the patient starts the flow outside there on their own application. So now that we have covered the basics of Smart on Fire and what it is, why it matters, and how it works, I'd like to hear from all of you. So let's take a quick poll.
Sure, Sanjit. Just launching the poll. All right, the poll should be up on your screen. So go ahead and answer the question, and we'll just take a couple of seconds here and we can discuss about it then. So, as the answers come in, it looks like a fair mix of different sorts of things that our audience thinks over here. And then once the poll is done, obviously Sanjit can tell us a little more in depth in terms of the answers, in terms of what his insights are on the answers. So we'll just take a couple of more minutes, make sure everyone answers the questions. Throughout the session, if you folks have any questions, be sure to put it in the QA section, or you can also drop it in the chat box. If you have any queries, anything that you need addressed, be sure to put it in the chat box and we will address it respectively. All right, with that, we do have everyone's answers secured. Ending the poll now, and I will share the screen. All right, results are shared. Sanjit, you can talk about the results. Let's see what our audience thinks over here.
Um, it looks like we still have a fair distribution of opinions. So again, it is spread across development, security, and even the use cases, which is actually making sense because Smart on Fire is touching the all these areas. So the key takeaway is that whatever your focus, the framework gives you capabilities and foundation that you can build on. So if we talk about multiple EHRs, that that actually validates the confusion around the standardizations, and it's the main reason why Smart on Fire exists. Since we have already covered the launch flows, your next step would be to explore developer sandbox, where you can practice connecting to different vendor system within a single code base. You can always visit the Smart Health application gallery, where you can try out different application, which will explain, which actually showcases how third-party applications work with different EHRs, and understanding the real-world use cases. Anything beyond the current examples that I have discussed here. Again, you can also visit the Smart Launch gallery that we have. There we have multiple third-party applications that are showcased, which also touches different areas and the different use cases that we have currently in the industry. and how different applications are actually making use of Smart on Fire framework.
Yeah, so I'll just
Now,
be putting the link in the chat box where our Smart Health app is listed so you guys can take a look. Sanjit, you can take it over now.
thank you, Ishita. All right. Now, I would like to showcase our HealthConnect application. It is a solution accelerator by Mindbowser. Here we have multiple tools that can help accelerate development of healthcare applications, maybe of any domain that you want to capture. So I'll go ahead with that demonstration. So this is the page for that. I'll specifically be showing the Smart on Fire applications here. Here we also have multiple other tools. On dashboard, we can see the metrics of different tools that we are integrated already. So here you can see um, some pie chart here. We have list of treatments here, appointments here. We have list of patients here, and we also have some AI recipes. So um, and these are multiple other tools like which focuses on different areas like length of stay, readmission, symptoms, which can again be integrated with your healthcare tool. Now, coming back on the area that we want to focus, that is Smart on Fire applications. Now, since I had mentioned already that Smart on Fire allows our third-party applications to actually integrate with the EHR systems. So let's take an example of AI medical summary tool. This is again a third-party tool, and there are multiple other tools that we have, for example, here. So I'll launch the first one. So this will take me to the smart app gallery, which I was talking about, and you can always find these tools that is mentioned in our HealthConnect system in the smart app gallery as well. So you can try those out as well. So I'll click on try app. Here you will see that we are redirected to authentication page. Okay. So now I'll be logging in as a practitioner here. Again, this varies from EHR to EHR. Now, since this is a demo app that is based on the sandbox of Smart, so here I'm redirect to the login page. And if you are in the any of the EHR tool like Epic or the Cerner, you might not be asked to authenticate once you have already authenticated. So as a practitioner now, I'll be selecting a patient. So here you can see that we are fetching the patient data here. And the fetching of data is completed here. So again, so to explain what this tool actually does, so this is a AI tool which takes in record of your medical history and any data that is related with the patient and summarizes it in simple words. So if you are a clinician or a doctor who wants to have a quick summary of the treatment or the condition of the patient, we can have it quickly. So I'll click on generate here. So what it will do, it will fetch some more details of the patient that is needed. So let's wait for it. All right. Now that we have the details of the patient, like we have conditions here like diabetes, insulin resistance, and we have medications that is being taken and what observations that have been observed with the patient. We see that the AI is actually generating a summary of the patient's medical history along with all the details that is mentioned here. So we can see quickly that it has some medication is being given like metformin. There is allergies to penicillin. There are some lab result that has been done like chest X-ray and many other details are here. So here the Smart on Fire actually shines since this is one of the multiple tools that can actually work with Smart on Fire framework, and it's actually integrates seamlessly, and also the exchange of data is secured, and it complies by the standards that we have in the industry like HIPAA or GDPR. Since all of the authentication and authorization happens from within EHR, or from it actually relies on EHR itself. So everything is secured and it actually follows the compliances. So now moving back to our webinar. So let's discuss what challenges that we might face during the development. So the first challenge is security and privacy. We are dealing with highly sensitive patient data here. So compliance with HIPAA and other privacy regulations is non-negotiable. So any smart on fire app must ensure that the data is encrypted in transit or whenever it is at rest, and that the tokens are properly managed, and that the only minimum necessary data is requested. So the best practice here is to apply the least privilege rule. Always give patients the transparency in how their data is used. Now, next is data integrity. Healthcare data is only useful if it's accurate and reliable. If your patient mishandles medication dosages or displays wrong lab results, the consequences can be serious. Best practice is rigorous testing here, not just of the application itself, but also how it interprets the fire data or the resources. You also want a strong error handling and logging to catch the issues early on. Next is user-centric design. Even the most secure and accurate app will fail if it isn't intuitive for the patients and the clinicians to use. Doctors are already overwhelmed with multiple clicks and the screens. Your app should not add to it, but simplify the workflow. Patients should feel empowered, not confused. Best practice is again continuous testing with the user, gathering feedback from the user, and iterating the interface to ensure that it truly supports the people who use it. The future on Smart and Fire is incredibly exciting. So, if we are talking about predictive analytics powered by real time clinical data, AI driven diagnostics that plug into EHRs, apps that help manage population at scale. So, we'll see more patient specific insights, better chronic disease management, and even behavioral health integrations. And as many countries adopt these standards, we'll also see a global interoperability. So where health data can follow wherever you go, whichever country you go, or even if you are across the borders. So the foundation is very strong here. What comes next will actually redefine how the healthcare is actually connected. So now to summarize everything, Smart on Fire tackles the messy part of healthcare. Think fragmented data, one-off integrations, and inconsistent logins. Smart standardizes how apps authenticate with what to, and OpenID Connect, how they request permissions with clear scopes, how they receive contexts like patient and encounters, so apps can talk to each other using Fire-enabled servers. Second, it accelerates the patient-centric app development because the data is in Fire and the launch and the security models are already standardized. Teams can prototype quickly, start with patient and observations today, and add medications or lab results tomorrow uh, without having to rewrite for each of the vendors. That means faster cycles, fewer surprises in QA, and real life changes that we can see across clinicians and patients. Third, the ecosystem is still evolving, and that is actually a good thing. Newer smart on fire capabilities, granular scopes, better identity signals, bulk and backend patterns. which are already raising the bars for the quality. As these standards mature and adoption widens, we get safer access, richer data, and smoother workflows, which translates into better coordinations, stronger patient engagement, and ultimately improved outcomes. So the big picture is interoperability that actually ships. Our platform developers can build quickly, and standards that is always getting better. So that brings us to the end of today's webinar, which was on Smart and Fire. We have walked through the challenges in healthcare, the role of Smart and Fire, how they work together, and how real world apps are actually transforming patient and provider experiences. Thank you all for your time and attention. Now, I'd like to hear from everyone what your questions are, and if there are any use cases or the technical details that you'd like me to dive deeper into.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sanjit, for sharing your knowledge, your insights. It was very insightful to hear from you in terms of the theoretical aspects as well as the live demonstration that you gave our audience. I'm sure there were a lot of questions that have already come in. I can already see a few questions, so we can start with those. And as we go, if you folks have any questions, go ahead and put it in the QA section, or you can also drop it in the chat box, and we'll make sure that your question is answered. Due to time constraints, we may not be able to get to all of your questions, but be rest assured that we will get in touch with you to answer your queries, your questions via email as well. So, Sanjit, you can start here. You can take a couple of questions at a time and go ahead and answer those. Throughout the session, there were questions that have come in, and we also do have questions that are still coming in. So, we can take them one by one slowly. Over to you, Sanjit.
Thanks, Ishita.
I can read them off for you and then you can go ahead and answer them. So, the first question we have over here is: how does Smart on Fire handle patient consent and data privacy when assessing EHR system?
All right. So Smart on Fire makes use of OAuth2 for authorization. So when apps request for access, the EHR's authorization server um, always presents with a consent screen. So the patient or the provider can define what data the patient or the provider wants to share. And it's totally upon the user's choice. So, and since I mentioned that the app should always work with least privilege access, so your application should only get the data that is needed. So again, that has to pass over from the patient's consent. And on top of that, some EHRs also generate FHIR consent resource behind the scenes, which acts as a formal or a machine readable record for what data was authorized. And again, after that, after the consent is approved, the data can be shared securely across HTTPS and while also maintaining the short life of the access token so that patient can always go back and revoke their consents.
That's wonderful. I hope that answered the question. We do have another question here which says: what are the recommended tools and frameworks for rapidly developing Smart on Fire apps without renewing the wheel? So, Sanjit, if you could help answer that question as well.
Yeah, sure, sure. All right. So there are several tools that can help you get started quickly. Like I mentioned here, the Smart App sandbox that we have, and I also showcased our solution accelerator, HealthConnect, and then we have Happy Fire server, which is open source and made on Java, and we also have some libraries like Fire.js, Smart.js, and we also have something from Epic. I think it's called Epic App Orchard, and we have one from Cerner as well, um, which is called I think Cerner code. So these are the tools which you can make use of to speed up your development process.
Okay, wonderful. And let's do one more question here. We have a question asking how scalable is the Smart on Fire architecture when deployed in large hospital networks with thousands of coherent users?
Um, to give my thoughts on this, I think Smart on Fire was already built to keep scalability in mind. So, and since it follows the protocols, popular web protocols like REST and OAuth, so which is already proven with high traffic applications. So, in practice, scalability depends on your fire server and the way it is implemented and how the hospital's infrastructure is maintaining them. And already the lead vendors like Epic or the Cerner and some cloud-based fire services already support horizontal scaling. So it comes with load balancers, some caching layers, and database shardings. So which are again proven technologies. So it can handle thousands of concurrent requests. And smart apps in itself isn't very heavy. It's quite lightweight. So they don't store any data locally. They always query via APIs. This makes them relatively very easy to scale over the large networks. So, if you're thinking of scalability, the key considerations could be efficient token management, caching of heavy resources, monitoring of your APIs, whether it's throttling or not, whether it is overwhelming the fire servers or not, and also, if we take example of any large healthcare systems, they have already proven that that the real world applications at scale is possible. Uh, so the model, which is Smart on Fire, is already proven.
Right, absolutely. Thank you, Sanjit. We do have a lot of questions still coming in over here. We have a few that are here and a lot of more questions coming in. I'm sure you're giving very insightful answers, Sanjit. So let's just take one more question here. We have a question saying, can you elaborate on how to build Smart on Fire apps that support offline functionality or intermediate connectivity? Could you help answer that question, Sanjit?
Sure, sure, sure. So to elaborate on offline functionality, so if I give a thought on this, uh, the exchange of resources and the authorization happens via EHR systems. So when we get the access over the fire resources and we are able to cache those resources, and that has to happen securely, and every resources that we gather or collect should always be encrypted as the HIPAA and the GDPR rules suggest. So only thing that we want to add here is this, the caching capabilities, which will allow the user to revisit the application and go through the data again. And not each and every functionality of the application has to be offline because some tools do rely on your internet connectivity. Like we have AI tools which cannot be processed on your device itself, and it has to rely on your AI specific servers or the AI processors that we have. So in those cases, we have to be online for the application. While otherwise, we have already proven concept how offline applications can work. Like we can always store the login resources or the login credentials of the patients or the user here. By login credentials, I do not mean that you will be storing the email or the password here. You will you will be storing the hashed version of the email and the password so that any data that you're storing on the device is still secured. So in that manner, we can build offline functionality.
Right. Thank you, Sanjit. And let's do one last question here. How do we handle EHR sandbox versus production differences? Apologies. So, if you could answer that question, please.
Sure, sure. So Smart on Fire was built to address this issue because Smart on Fire lays down the rules behind how applications should authenticate and authorize on the resources. And Fire also lays down the standards and the rules uh, that that allows access over the Fire resources, maybe details regarding the observations or the medications or the lab results. So rules are already laid here. So whether you are working on a sandbox or whether you are working on a production, I think it should be quite similar. And since you will be working on the actual product, there are also some flexibility that you have. Like let's say you want certain data to be structured in certain manner. So Fire is not very restrictive in that case. So you can always be flexible with how you're storing the resources. So let's say you are trying out sandbox and you have a proof of concept that your Smart on Fire is working fine with your application, then you can quickly move over to your production application and plan out how you want to store resources, what data is actually necessary for you. So everything is laid out already. So if you'll go and read through the specs of the Fire, you'll have a quite clear understanding how everything works.
Absolutely. All right. I think we can wrap up at that note for now. We do have a lot more questions. So, like mentioned previously, we will get in touch with you in terms of your questions to answer your queries. We will be getting in touch with you via email. You can also get in touch with us. I will be sharing our contact details with you. And once again, thank you so much, Sanjit, for sharing your knowledge, your insights. It was definitely a very informative session. And thank you to our audience for keeping it interactive, answering the pros proactively. And like mentioned, we will be getting in touch with you in terms of the webinar assets and the recording. And I am also sharing our contact information in the chat box. So you can go ahead and get in touch with us if you have any questions, concerns, if you'd like to book a one on one session with us, we would be more than happy to assist you with your queries. Once again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining in today, and you have a good rest of your day.